Mrs. Chilton,
Here.
Dr. Estrop,
Here.
Mr. O'Neill, Mr. Rue,
Here.
Mr. Copeland.
Here. The purpose of this meeting is for me to put my glasses on. The purpose of this meeting is for public hearing to consider a right-of-way vacation. Has proper legal notice been given to the hearing?
Notice was published in the Springfield News and Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city, advertising the city commission's consideration of vacating the first alley north Selma Road from Cypress Street southeast to the first intersecting alley being approximately 150 feet. Attached here two are true and correct copies of the notices of public hearing published on July 27th and August 3rd, 2021.
I move that the communication be ordered, received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Clerk will call the roll.
Can we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes. Staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before I get started with the official staff report, I'd like to introduce our new city planner who's joining us in the audience this evening, Ms. Waidehi Agwan. She started with us on July 12th. So in the near future, she's going to be taking over presenting staff reports to the City Commission and Planning Board and Board of Zoning. So please welcome her, and she's been a great addition to our team so far.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay, but you're not off the hook tonight. Go ahead.
Not tonight. Okay,
Make
so
this good if it's your last one for a while.
I have a couple more. Okay, so this right-of-way vacation is off of Selma Road on the southeast side of town. It's just east of the School of Innovation. You can see the subject alley outlined in yellow on the screen off of Cypress Street. The applicant lives in the house just to the north along Cypress Street. Return reports from utilities and other city departments. There were no objections. Utility easements need to be maintained. Planning and zoning comment. The applicant states the request is to reduce the crime and traffic that occurs in the alley. The staff recommendation for this item is approval of the request to vacate the subject right-of-way. The city planning board voted on this matter and it was a 4-4 decision. And on the screen, you can see a picture of the alley looking towards the east from Cypress Street. And I can answer questions. I don't believe the applicant is present.
Any questions from commissioners?
Yes. Were there any objections to this?
Yes, we had at least one objection, and that person is present tonight. He owns property along Selma Road, just to the, my pointer to work. So he owns this house as well as a vacant lot to the left, and he was opposed to it, stating that closing the alley would deny him access to the rear of those properties. He can explain in further depth, but that was the main objection we heard.
I'd like to hear from.
Any other questions of staff? Anyone want to speak in favor of this motion? Anyone want to speak against it? If so, go to the microphone.
Gary Durst, 2800 South Limestone Street. I own the property at 908 Selma and the empty lot right beside it. Closing the alley would eliminate access to the rear of that, both for myself and, as you can see, one other property owner. But the access to the rear of mine, I have, there's a basement, and it opens to the outside, only from the rear. So it's easier to get, just get there from the alley. The applicant at the planning board meeting, the main objection was because there are three or four units up there, I think are Metropolitan owned, that there was a crime concern of them coming down through past her property. The thing that she wanted to do, and again, I'm not speaking for her, but from the planning board, She wanted to she wanted to close the alley and then build a fence. She apparently has already bought the fence, a wood fence she wants to put it down the middle of the alley. My contention is that, I have several other properties, 5 or 6 other properties within a 2 or 3 block area. We've had no report to us, from any of our, residents about any major crime, including the one that abuts the alley. The fence, in my opinion, would do, if the fence will stop the crime, then where it shows her, I think, Stephen has a picture of that, where her, chain link fence is. If that would stop it, there's no reason she couldn't remove the chain link fence and put it right there, and it would do the exact same thing, if indeed that would stop. That's all I have.
Anyone else want to speak to this matter?
I have a question. I think I had asked if there was a police report because the applicant had said that there was, several incidents in her application.
The police didn't submit any backup information along with a recommendation of approval, but the applicant did state that crime happens on some units along Buckeye Street to the very north, and they come down this alley and then go past her house and out. But I have no police report on hand that.
And when I looked at it, there was nothing specifically for that area or the immediate addresses.
So the applicant just walked in.
I was asking, was there a police report or any information?
Would you please go to the microphone if you're going to talk? Go ahead.
We need your name and address for the
Name and
record.
address for
It's
the
Renee
record.
Hayes,
Yes.
912 Cypress.
But I was asking, was there a police report? You had indicated in your application that a lot of the crimes were happening on Buckeye Street. So I was asking, was there any police report of that?
I don't have any, but there's several. I'm sure the police are out there all the time. Sorry.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding if you just wouldn't you just stop and protect your property if you just fenced your property in? I guess I'm having a hard time following why you want to put a fence down the middle, just to keep cars.
I'm not going to put a fence down the middle per se. Basically just to stop the through traffic. I had talked to Steve to see if we could do something like in the middle, but he said that's against the law for Springfield code or.
Any other questions from commissioners of the applicant? Anything else you want to say to us? Okay. Are there opponents who want to speak? Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
Excuse
So-
me, Mayor. I have a letter that was received.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she told me there was a letter and I missed it. Go ahead.
The letter reads, "To whom it may concern," and this comes from Tammy Mundy, owner of Mundy's Diner on Selma Road. "To whom it may concern, I own Mundy's Diner on Selma Road, and I wish I could attend this meeting, but I am so busy. I agree that this alley should be blocked off due to the traffic driving through and drugs or whatever they are doing. I've cleaned this alley many times and they continue to dump there. Thank you so much, Tammy Mundy."
Pretty bad right there.
You want to say anything else before we adjourn the hearing?
Really, I just did it for the safety of myself and my neighbors. That it's bad right there. So, I'm not saying the alley's gonna stop everything, but I think it will stop a lot of things. But, Buckeye Street back there, it's one way in, one way out. So, a lot of times police are called, people know they're gonna run down our way, and usually it's through the alley there. Because if they go out Buckeye Street, they're going to order the police that are coming. So I don't know. It's just, it's pretty bad right there. And that's, I mean, I don't know if the alley's gonna help per se, but I hope. If so.
Anything else?
No.
Anyone else want to speak to this matter? Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. The hearing scheduled for 6:55 is called to order. Purpose of this meeting is for public hearing, consider right-of-way vacation as proper legal notice been given to the hearing.
Notice was published in the Springfield News and Sun, a newspaper of general circulation within the city, advertising the city commission's consideration of vacating the first alley east of Eden Avenue from Mulberry Street North to the first intersecting east-west alley. Attached here too are true and correct copies of the notices of public hearing published on June 7th and June 14th, 2021.
I move that communication be ordered, received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Clerk, staff report.
Okay, you can see the subject alley outlined in yellow on the screen off of West Mulberry Street. The applicants for this case own property on either side of the alley, so they are the only two directly affected property owners. Here's a view of the alley from West Mulberry Street. Return reports from utilities and other city departments. No objections. Maintain utility easement rights. Planning and zoning comment. The applicants are the owners on either side of the alley. Staff recommendation for this item is approval of the request to vacate the subject right-of-way. City Planning Board unanimously recommended approval, and I can answer questions.
Questions of staff?
I have a couple of questions. Were there any objections, and was a cross-access easement agreement required?
So there were no objections, and yes, they did provide one.
Thank you.
Anybody in the audience want to speak to this matter? Anybody?
My name is Kelly Randall. The gentleman coming up next to me is Mike Smouse. We live in 1116. I had to remember where I live. And the people that live in 1118 have not made it to the meeting. We are requesting this be vacated. First of all, the people that we bought the house from were on the side with the silver car. They had the alleyway paved, which you would think, oh, that's really great, except for the fact that nobody uses any of the other directions. They use the paved. After we moved in 2013, about 2 years after that, there was so much traffic coming down that paved piece, and they were coming down it at times so fast, I had 2 speed bumps put in. It slowed it to a point. We have 1 or 2 that think it's more fun to speed up and go over the speed bumps now than before. We've had a couple issues. We've had people try to steal the neighbor's dog. We've had kids come down through there, and either side we have animals, and there's little kids that come down the alleyway and play in the alleyway. And part of our issue was that because people don't look really, and they come down that alleyway so fast because it's paved, we're afraid for the kids, because kids, you know, they don't move as fast as adults, and can't get out of the way. And and people coming down, when they drive down there, the pop cans, the beer cans, the cigarette butts, the whatever's coming out the window, they've actually ran into the chain link fence on this side, this owner's property and bent it all up. So there's traffic that coming down through there that really has no need to come down there. Matter of fact, just the other day, I was standing on my porch and the lady in the house behind and to this side came down this way, came down the alley, turned right on Mulberry to go down to Eden, turned right on Eden to go right past the closer exit to her where she parked the car. And I see this all the time and I'm like, okay, I don't understand why you're doing that, other than the fact that it's paved. Now, the first year we were there, we did clear the snow. The second, we did not. We cleared it up to our garage, which is on this side. Our garage is this side, their garage is the white one in the back, and those are the only two garages. I mean, it's our properties that are affected by this alley. There's no reason for the amount of traffic that's coming down through there. And he's witnessed a couple of things that he would like to talk about.
Yeah, I've witnessed a couple of times people come up one end of the alley, another one's coming the other way, and they sitting there arguing, blowing horns, pissing each other, move weeds here first. And I can hear it right in our kitchen windows, was right on the other side of that bay window over here. And they argue where you think they're gonna fight. It's ridiculous. Just cause it's paved.
We're over and arguing over who had right of way down the alleyway.
But there's it goes down this way and then tees off this way, Mulberry and Jefferson Street. And it comes across and it goes straight across. Down this way, there's another alley, tees off right there.
And see where the line of white cars are up at the top of the screen?
They come down this
They
way
all
and go around.
back up and come down and then come back around onto Eden.
They all do. They all come
They
around.
all
They don't
do.
go that way. They come
No.
down this way and that
And
way.
there's-
They come down, turn right, and turn right again.
Yeah, so,
Anything else?
nope,
Nope, that's it.
that'll do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wants to speak to this matter?
I have another staff question. So just for clarity, both the properties are owned just on each side of that alley, one owner each. And then is that, the alley that is perpendicular, is that open all the way through?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else from commission? Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
I'll move.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. For the information of the petitioners, this is a first reading tonight. That doesn't make it a law. So first reading tonight, and then at our next meeting, we would vote on it. So if you want to stick around, you can, but we won't be voting on this evening. Okay? What? Well, I'm not supposed to tell you that, but if I were you, I probably would be there. You're certainly welcome, 2 weeks from tonight. Yep. Okay. Okay, that takes care of our hearings. So the commission meeting is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Here.
Dr. Estra?
Here?
Mr. O'Neill? Mr. Rue?
Here.
Mr. Copeland?
Here. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for the opportunity to make decisions to affect the city of Springfield. Help us to do it well this evening and serve the people as best we can. In your name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. The roll call from the hearings will cover this meeting also. Is there a motion to approve the minute?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Clerk will proceed by first readings by title only.
Vacating the first alley north of Selma Road from Cypress Street southeast to the first intersecting alley, being approximately 150 feet. Vacating the first alley east of Eden Avenue from Mulberry Street north to the first intersecting east-west alley. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement for real estate for the purchase of certain real property located at 811 Burt Street from Roundtree Home Solutions LLC for an amount not to exceed $300,000, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said purchase agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement for real estate for the purchase of certain real property located at 2040 South Limestone Street from Nielsen Property Limited for an amount not to exceed $314,500, and authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said purchase agreement and comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements. Accepting the application for annexation of certain territory containing 72.68 acres, more or less, in Springfield Township and commonly known as the South Vernon East Level Lane annexation area to the city of Springfield, Ohio. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a development incentive agreement, single-family residential development with William L. Wilcox Jr. to provide sewer services to real property outside the city limits. The next item has been added to the agenda, declaring the improvement to certain parcels to be a public purpose and exempt from taxation pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 5709.40B, providing for the collection and deposit of service payments and specifying the purposes for which those service payments may be expended and authorizing school compensation payments.
Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak to one of these first readings? We will not be voting on them this evening. Go
I
ahead.
have a couple of questions and then comment. My questions and comments, directed at item number 213-21 and 214-21. And then the question is also about 219-21. Just need some additional information on that. 213-21 and 214-21, as I understand it, the money that essentially is being planned to use for this would be part of the whole package of the American Rescue Plan, which is about, as I recall, about $44 million. Obviously, that's a lot of money and could be used for a lot of purposes in the city. I will not be here next week because of a medical procedure I'm having. I will be absent as part of my recovery. And we haven't had a public hearing on the whole package. I would like to request that we have a public hearing, not a public hearing, but a work session, a work session on the whole package, so we can see how all these bits and pieces fit together. Because I don't take exception to either one of these purchases, but I think we need to have and be able to explain to the public what we hope we can get done with $44 million. Because this is just a very small piece of that total package. And I want to make sure we have an opportunity as a commission to consider that in a work session, to ask questions. So I'm not going to oppose this, but I would request that we have a work session to consider the larger American Rescue Plan and how this and other things may fit in.
Yeah, Commissioners, we certainly can do that, and given that you'll be out at the next meeting, we can present that at the September 14th
That should
City
work.
Commission meeting.
That should work fine for me. I hope, God willing, that I'll be back by then, but that would be helpful, and I think would give us an opportunity to have some conversations and to have a conversation publicly that the people can understand. And one of the things I would ask you to consider as part of that, I know it's not law, but we have this infrastructure plan that has passed the United States Senate. What I hope we could avoid is spending money out of the American Rescue Plan that might be covered by the infrastructure plan, and I know the infrastructure plan hasn't passed. So we're betting to a degree on it, but we have so many needs in the city. I want to make sure we can tap both and retain the greatest flexibility we can in terms of how we spend our money and on what. We certainly have needs, a lot of them US EPA ordered in terms of wastewater. We have needs in terms of the fire division. We have needs in terms of police, housing, a variety of things, energy. But I just want to make sure that we have a complete understanding of the big picture so we can make good decisions on these individual pieces.
And Commissioner, I forgot to, Commissioner Rue is going to be out on the 14th as well, traveling, so we'll do that on the 28th, and that way all the commissioners can be present. That's important for that. Again,
There's just, there's about 150 pages of guidelines, right?
yeah, right now,
So-
and they actually have not even been finalized yet. It's initial guidance that we're working off of. And so far, what we've learned from the proposed infrastructure bill and the ARP, the way the American Rescue Plan dollars are intended to be spent is much different than what the infrastructure bill would allow to be spent. And we don't know how the allocations are actually work with the infrastructure bill, whether it's going to go similar to how COVID funding has gone, where municipalities and stuff have received a direct allocation, or if it's going to funnel through essentially a grant cycle or grant process through the different federal agencies down to the state agencies, then to the localities. So the 28th will give us plenty of time to prepare some stuff about the infrastructure bill as well.
Nevertheless, Dr. Estrop, I think it's a great idea. I think there's so many questions about how are we going to spend the money? And then there's a lot of people that are like, well, if you're going to have this money, you can do this and several other things. So I think having a good meeting that's even publicized so that the public can definitely know, and our news source can be here to really hear some facts that you guys have been already working on, your staff has for quite some time.
Yes,
I
definitely.
think it's a great idea.
This won't put you behind the eight ball in terms of meeting any kind of spending guidelines where we would need to take action before are we gonna miss some money from the feds if we don't take immediate action on the whole package, or?
No, I don't think so, Commissioners. I think we'll be fine if we hold a work session on the 28th. We'll
Good.
start rolling out. This was kind of an initial purchase that we had to start proceeding on because we were able to lock down the property. So that's why those
Yeah.
come before you.
I don't have any problem with either one, but I just think of, as I said, a review of the total package, the American Rescue Plan, and how it fits together with what we anticipate coming from the infrastructure plan would be useful to all of us.
Isn't there like a kind of an extended timeline to decide how we're going to spend it? Isn't it about a year?
There is an extended timeline, but there are also some tricky realities related to purchasing some of the things that we are targeting for this money. And we're seeing price increases that are almost unprecedented in some of this stuff. So it may require us to move speedily on some of the items on the list.
I don't think the pressure is from the feds, it's from getting these things
Right,
under control.
finding contractors, finding,
Right.
inflationary pressures, that sort of thing are causing us to try and move quicker.
Yeah, and part of that is specifically on the water sewer infrastructure. So a piece of what we're proposing, recommending relates to water and sewer infrastructure, which we know is necessary and is a main component of what they've pushed through the American Rescue Plan. So you actually approved at the last meeting, I think it was the last meeting, a purchase of, to proceed with the project out at the water treatment plant related to the elevator. So there's some projects that we've had to start working on because supply chain. We have to, have the money encumbered by the end of 2024 and then actually spent by the end of 2026, which seems like a long time, but with the supply chain issues that we're facing right now and getting things designed and engineered, it's gonna be a quick timeline.
Some of the contractors that we've normally relied on,
Yeah.
they're overwhelmed with business right now, and so I think we want to move ahead, but I think we need to see the big picture, see how this money can fit into our goals and objectives we have as a city. And so as we then approach these pieces, we know where they fit in the puzzle.
Yeah, and I will, commissioners, I probably will specifically utilize the goals and objectives as my outline on each of the projects discussed, because again, what was important as staff worked through this was to accomplish the city commission goals and objectives through the projects that were selected and eligible under the ARP fund.
Great, thank you so much.
And then,
Yeah, 21921, what are we doing there?
yeah, so 21921 is establishing a TIF district for the project. If you recall, there's a project proposed up on the north side of our community, which is the Redwood Apartment Project. They came through a zoning process here, probably about 4 or 5 months ago. And that project is moving forward. They're advancing forward, but they have requested a TIF. So this would establish a TIF district for that project. If you recall, the proposal was to construct 94 high-end luxury apartments in this location. And so this would allow that project to advance forward, and again, continuation of increased housing in our.
Thank you very much.
And I have a question for, I believe it's our service director on 213-21. I know that has to do with the combined sewer overflow on that property. So exactly what is it?
Yeah, so specifically, and I can speak to that, Commissioner. So what's nice about this property over on Burt Street, it's right at the corner of Burt and Kenton, and it's the old Bomag Industrial Facility, is one, it allows us to advance forward with the construction of a new fire station, which meets this locational study as completed that Brian Miller had done before retreat last year, or this past year. But we also accomplished another big goal, which is eliminating 2 combined sewer overflows. So there's 2 combined sewer overflows immediately in the vicinity of this property, and taking that property, those buildings offline, would allow us to eliminate those 2 combined sewer overflows, which, as you know, is a goal of our long-term control plan, is to eliminate combined sewer overflow.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, where were we when, what were you reading?
I'm ready for second reading.
Okay. Second readings.
Authorizing the finance director to purchase 3,850 tons of rock salt for the 2021-2022 winter season from American Rock Salt Company, LLC, for an amount not to exceed $240,779 through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a development incentive agreement, single-family residential development with Alexander Jared Robinson and Janice Robinson, to provide for sewer services to real property outside the city limit.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and Archon Builders for the White Box Retail Space Build-Out Project to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $21,841.97 for a total amount not to exceed $385,220.97, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2.
Move to adopt.
Second,
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I want to make sure that item 15521, the one that's on the floor now, and then emergency item 15521A, that all relate to the retail spaces in our new parking garage.
Yes, that is correct, commissioners. And so we have a contract with Archon Builders to do the white box retail space build out for the garage spaces there. And so these change orders are associated with that project. There's going to be some various ups and downs throughout the project as we do different things. The one that's an emergency ordinance, which will come later, is actually related to an agreement that we have with a potential tenant to remove a couple of items, but also add in some items, and then we'll be reimbursed by the tenant when they locate in that.
I want to remind folks, we've got 3 spaces in the parking garage for retail.
Yes, there are 3 spaces, approximately about 3,300 square feet of retail opportunity there on Fountain to kind of mirror what's on the other side of the street as well.
So, and we have some interested possible tenants?
Yes, we do, and very close to finalizing some agreements to have tenants start as soon as our contractor is completed.
Super. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anyone in the audience want to speak to this? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes,
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into Amendment D to the engineering services agreement with Black & Veatch Corporation for the primary effluent pumps replacement evaluation and design project to increase the contract for an amount not to exceed $574,710 for a total amount not to exceed $1,364,840, and to extend the completion date to June 1st, 2023.
Move to adopt.
second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
This is a substantial increase. I was wondering if someone on the staff could speak to it.
Yeah, I will ask Chris Moore, our service director, to do that.
Yes, so Black & Veatch were the designers on the project, and as part of them winning that design, we agreed to negotiate with them to inspect and administer the project. Because the entire scope is not laid out in advance, we wait until the project is developed, come up with the terms and conditions of how that inspection will work, and then bring it before you as a change order. So this is for them to perform those services on that project at the wastewater treatment plant.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes,
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming and approving change order number 3 to the contract between the city and Archon Builders for the White Box Retail Space Build-Out Project to increase the contract in amount not to exceed $21,869.63 for a total amount not to exceed $406,407.14, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 3 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Adopt.
second.
And moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. When will the space be ready and we'll get a tenant in there?
Yeah, so the white box build out should be completed sometime in October, and then we would hope that we could get tenants in there before the end of the year.
Thank you.
In the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes,
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the acceptance of a donation from the Springfield Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association of 2 new body shields with a total value of $4,111.94, and declaring an emergency therein.
so move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Just like to thank our Citizens Police Academy alumni.
You beat me to it. I was going to say the same thing.
Sorry.
We appreciate these citizens who help us at various turns and I know the department does too. Anybody else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrella?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 1 to the contract with Miller's Property Service LLC for weed cutting and lot clearing services as needed by the city to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $30,000 for a total amount not to exceed $80,000, confirming and approving related expenditures from August 5th, 2021 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes, I thought we had settled this earlier with the contracts to, handle the weeds this summer. What happened?
Yes, Commissioners, I'll ask Steve Thompson, our Community Development Deputy Director, to answer that question.
Yes, so one of the issues was we had initially awarded 5 contractors. One of those contractors dropped out of our program after the season started. And so that's put more pressure on our remaining 4 to make up for that work. Miller's is the first one to start bumping up to that current not to exceed amount. If others get close towards the end of the season, we'll be back for those amendments as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrella?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into a sub-recipient funding agreement, American Rescue Plan Act, state and local fiscal recovery funds, funding for security assistance at emergency shelters with Interfaith Hospitality Network Incorporated, provide funding for security assistance at non-congregate emergency shelters for an amount not to exceed $300,000 over a 3-year period, authorizing the city manager, law director, and director of finance to perform all acts and execute all documents they consider necessary to fulfill the city's obligations under said sub-recipient funding agreement and to comply with all relevant local, state, and federal legal requirements and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to have Shannon give us just a brief and quick rundown of what we've been doing to help our displaced citizens in our homeless community, what the city's been doing over the last several months.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Rue. As you know, the city as well as the county and the state of Ohio have been assisting Interfaith Hospitality Network, who pre-COVID had a capacity of serving an average of 55 individuals each month who were experiencing homelessness with emergency shelter. Currently, IHN is serving 347 individuals in what's called non-congregate shelter. That is a fancy word for hotels in order to continue social distancing and prevent the spread of COVID-19 as much as possible. Literally hotels.
Sometimes the community doesn't really know what we've been doing to help.
Yes,
so I wanna
sir.
make
Yes,
sure.
sir. So since March 20th, 2020, IHN has operated their emergency shelter services in hotels. That was under the direction of both the county health commissioner as well as the director of health for the state of Ohio. 347 individuals at this point in time. That is down. It is down over 100 individuals, thank God. But I will report consistently, we have averaged 40% of those individuals being served as children under the age of 17. We are seeing many families that are indeed displaced from their homes, displaced for the first time in their familial lives, on top of those who have continued to struggle with homelessness in and out. Just remember that IHN is the front door of emergency shelter services. They are not the end-all solution to poverty. So this is definitely, as you say, the community doesn't necessarily understand everything IHN is doing, but this is an underscore call to action for the greater community to, really think about and address the infrastructure needs that we have to serve those who are struggling either from the effects of COVID-19, the economic fallout of those effects, or just poverty in general and the housing crisis. This particular contract will underscore and support additional security as people continue to live in hotels into the fall and winter, and as our community continues to build that infrastructure of response.
And then the front door being HN and how the community's responded. So the next step would be to help these individuals get into subsidized housing?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of agencies, nonprofits,
What are a couple of those?
care providers, et cetera, that have a key and critical role in addressing this crisis. But the ability to transition into permanent housing, often managed through housing choice vouchers, known as Section 8, as well as public housing, is indeed the most critical step that we need to be addressing as an entire community.
Through the Springfield Metropolitan Housing Authority, right?
Yes, the Springfield Metropolitan Housing Authority. Mhm.
Great authority.
Yeah, no problem.
I assume we'll continue to work closely with that organization in terms of meeting the needs of our population here in
Our team has worked many hours with the Housing Authority, as well as the agencies that fund the authority and other service providers. And we look forward to a more equal lift moving forward when we are discussing the transition to permanent housing.
I think, and if you bring it up, Commissioner, this is not a lift that we can do by ourselves.
Is absolutely correct.
This whole housing dilemma, housing issue, requires us to join hands with others, other people, other organizations in our community to address this issue. So I think the ability to work successfully on an ongoing basis with our partners and have them equally involved in the lift is critical to our success.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That also requires us to try to help those agencies get their act together from time to time, which is
Absolutely.
true
Couldn't
right
be
now,
better said,
so,
Mayor. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well
Um,
said.
Anything else on this issue? Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes,
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 2 to the sub-recipient funding agreement with the Clark County Combined Health District to modify the agreement attachments and to extend the period of performance to July 15, 2022, and declaring an emergency therein.
To adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I would like for our city manager to talk about the fact that I think our citizens need to understand and to know that the city of Springfield is funding money toward the combined health district for the COVID shots, COVID testing. So could you talk about this for a little bit?
Yeah, so specifically, just to emphasize what you said, we are working with our health department very closely to develop solutions and work with the public on targeting the COVID variant that is currently out there, the Delta variant. And that's what specifically this item helps to address as we have seen a spike in cases in our community. Mark can speak specifically to what the agreement entails, and then Shannon has anything to add, he can add as well. So.
This helps defray some of the expenses that the health department has as far as setting up testing throughout our community, specifically targeting areas in the low and moderate income areas. And this is particularly relevant at this point in time as the variant is starting to ramp up. So we have extended the testing period or window of supporting this testing through July.
Thank you. And I'm hearing that some people are getting booster shots with certain health issues already.
It seems like they are expanding. The CDC's come out with new recommendations and guidance as it relates to both vaccines, but also how people handle the quarantine and so forth that have been vaccinated versus those that have not been vaccinated. And then again, as Mark alluded, this is to help defray some of the costs of the testing. I do know the health district has reestablished their testing site. It's on High and Buxton, and it is operational Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 to 2.
Thank you. So if anybody needs a test, they can go there.
They can contact the health district and they can get them scheduled for an appointment.
Okay, do we have information on booster shots yet?
No additional information right now. Again, the CDC guidance just came out that immunocompromised individuals would have access to a booster, essentially a booster shot of the vaccine. But outside of that guidance, there has not been any new information.
Thank you.
Just wanted to add, again, we recognize formally the Charlie Patterson, Commissioner Patterson and his staff, but they continue to do a great job. And in talking with him last week in his COVID briefing, he again pleaded with people, please get the shot. And if you've chosen not to do, please mask up and observe some of the other suggestions, recommendations like washing our hands, maintaining social. We haven't completely whipped this thing. It's coming back with this Delta variant, and unfortunately what I read says there may be other variants. Please consider a vaccination. If not, consider masking up and helping the others in our community.
It's like the virus has a brain and figures out different ways to get where it wants to go whenever we shut off one of the options.
Yeah.
Were you gonna say?
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
The next item was added to the agenda, authorizing the installation of a sludge storage facility at the wastewater treatment plant from Blue Scope Construction for an amount not to exceed $2,533,383 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provision of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? I must tell you that I have voted for more money to deal with sewage than any other issue over the last 10 years. And a part of that is that the federal government is on our back because our stuff goes into one body of water that goes to another body of water and it ends up down at the Mississippi. And so therefore they're pressing us to keep stuff from getting there. And that's a very, very expensive proposition. And we keep trying to talk them into cheaper solutions. And sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not, right?
Just
And
stinks,
so-
Warren.
What?
That it just stinks. Dad humor, I can't help it.
This is
sometimes.
specifically because this is for sludge storage, so very, very stinky.
I'm afraid to ask too many questions about this.
I had a question for our service director to talk about exactly what is a sludge storage facility?
I tried to save you on that, Joyce.
Oh, my.
Yeah, and I'll have Chris talk on that real quick. I want to let the commissioners know this is another example of the use of ARP funds. So water and sewer infrastructure, again, was a large emphasis of the guidance that has been provided. And what's been nice about this is we've been able to go after and really work towards accomplishing projects that need to be done but are very expensive and try to reduce the impact on our ratepayers by using these federal dollars. So this is another example towards a sewer infrastructure project that hopefully will save money not only with the storage of this and by using ARP funds, but long-term too, if Chris wants to talk about field application versus solid waste disposal. The whole idea around storage is so that we can field apply it as opposed to the more expensive route.
Yeah, so we currently have, you probably all seen our belt filter press machine that presses the liquid out of the sludge, and then we have to store the sludge in a dry location until it can be hauled away and applied to farm fields. And If the fields are frozen or the fields are too muddy, we can't apply it. If our facility reaches capacity, the sludge is then outside subject to the elements. When it gets wet, we pay to get rid of it by the wet ton, or our costs go up. So currently, we own the buildings across from the wastewater treatment plant, the old COVA facility. This project will demolish those and build two new, they're clear span type, just hoop buildings on those sites. And there will be scales so the sludge can be weighed when it goes away. Long term, this should more than pay for itself. The cost to send sludge to a landfill versus putting it on a field, it's a 372% price increase. So we want to do everything we can to keep it dry and be able to store it until it can be applied in a much better way. We don't want anything going to the landfill, so that's what this will do.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I think that's David.
Anyone else?
I may make one last comment about this issue, and that is that it was brought to you tonight as an emergency ordinance because of the inflationary pressures that I was talking about earlier. If we had waited much longer, we'd be paying $100,000 more. That's what we're faced with in many of these projects.
Okay. Clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes?
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. That concludes our agenda. Are there other items that come before us from commissioners?
I was just wanting to know, to get an update from staff. At our last meeting, we approved emergency building demolition, and I wanted to know how that demolition had gone and just a general update about what we were dealing with.
Yeah, Commissioners, I'll ask Shannon Meadows, our Community Development Director, to speak to that project.
So I was just by the site this morning, and demolition is complete. There is some minor, what we call handwork that remains, but for the most part, everything is finished, and the managed efforts to prevent dangers of additional life safety concerns was successfully carried out. Following the commission approval 2 weeks ago, the demolition contractor, along with both Ohio Edison and Columbia Gas, mobilized at about 9 a.m. the next morning. And by 3 p.m. that day, the safety concerns were completely addressed. And then for the next 48 hours, they finished cleaning up the site and prepping the slab that will remain in place, as we don't know what the environmental conditions within the soil are.
Were there any problems in the process of demolishing the building? Other than the usual?
Yeah, other than the usual, I mean, demolition in and of itself is an art. We like to call it a ballet dance of heavy equipment. Everything came down as we would expect, because the firm that was carrying it out, Tony Smith Wrecking, knows what they're doing, particularly on industrial facilities. It was a little complicated by the accumulations that were on the property and within the buildings, slowed because, you know, you have to move the accumulations to proceed with the rest of demolition. But for the most part, it's a pretty neat and interesting thing to watch, as long as you know it's a controlled environment and that there's not going to be a collapse that isn't in your control.
People have asked me from time to time, Shannon, why are you leaving the slab? And you mentioned it. Why don't you explain in a little more detail? Because we did that at the Euclid project, now this project.
Absolutely.
And there's some good reason.
Thanks for asking that. Actually, all of our old industrial property that we have in Springfield has a significant risk of environmental contamination. And that environmental contamination risk comes just from the historic use of the property as industrial. These particular buildings, as well as the one you referenced, Euclid Elements, were developed at the turn of the century. 1898 and 1900 were when these buildings were built, and industrial practices were completely unregulated.
We've turned another century since then, you know.
Yeah, you're right. Dang. Now I've shown my age. But at that point in time, industrial practices were completely unregulated, and industrial practices were not regulated to the level that we are familiar with until 1988. And because of that, there's often a risk of significant environmental contamination within the soil itself. Often in Springfield, the three main contaminants that we deal with are benzoyl-pyrene, arsenic, and lead. We want to keep those slabs in place to cap the environmental contamination that may or may not be there until we've had an opportunity to test it. I'll just put in a quick plug. For the first time in over a decade, the state has made available once again the opportunity for me to put my old hat back on. Not that I'm excited at all. But brownfield dollars will be made available to all 88 counties, as well as competitive dollars that will allow us to address not only the demolition, but the assessment cost and ultimate remedial action plans that we may need to turn the rest of these idle properties into productive use. So feels kind of good to dust off my hard hat and steel toe boots.
Thank you. So this site is fairly close to where I live, and so I drove by it every day to see how things were going and supervise, but I never left the car, right? And it is interesting to watch the process. Anything else to come before us from commissioners?
Yes. I had asked about night out for the community, and I think Captain Mose, can you tell us about that, please?
Thank you, Commissioner Chilton. I did check into National Night Out, and as it happens, because of COVID this year, we did not plan anything because we weren't sure we were even going to be able to hold it. Then in June, early June, while we were released, but no plans really had been in place. And now with the Delta variant, our staff does not feel that it would be wise to hold a National Night Out this year. But however, I have instructed them to plan for National Night Out 2022.
Thank you. And the only other thing I had was to congratulate Logan Cobb, who is now Deputy City Manager. Do I have that right? Congratulations.
Congratulations. Anything else to come before us from commissioners? Anyone in the audience want to speak to us?
My name is Harold Frost. I live at 3043 Orange Gate Road,
Okay,
Springfield
so
03.
I am required to mention that there's a 3-minute limit. Go ahead.
Oh.
You've never reached it yet. Go ahead.
And as a point of information, I'd like to ask the commission, I travel all over this city. I'm everywhere around in this city. And I see the same thing everywhere in this city, and that is bicycles, motorcycles, four-wheelers, mini bikes, electric scooters, which I think they're a good thing. They're all on the sidewalk. And I've seen them even, people have to get off the sidewalk to let them go through. And they will, so they don't run over them. As a point of information, I ask, is that what the sidewalks are for?
The sidewalks are for walking, but be clear, the scooters are required to be in the street. That was a part of our motion on that one.
Everything I mentioned is required to be in the street, actually. And that they're all over the city, on the sidewalk, that's where they go. And I've seen all of them.
Our police officer is going to respond to you.
Thank you very much. Prior to COVID, we actually had officers that were working a special assignment on the bike paths in about the city. That ended last year because of COVID, but we also sent a bunch of officers off to be specifically bike trained this month. I think it was 12. So now they can go out and work that assignment and follow up on some of these things that he's speaking.
So we're trying to address it.
If people have immediate concerns, Captain Moose, can they just contact the non-emergency number for the police department, or how do they get the information to you about specific maybe areas or areas of town or? What would you like them to do to report?
If they want to call the
this?
non-emergency number, they could call 937-324-7680.
Could
And
you repeat that slowly, please?
937-324-7680.
Okay.
And that gets to dispatch, but our officer that works the desk, which is a very similar number, 937-324-7685, they'll mark those locations in a book so that all the officers are aware and they're checking them on a regular.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I talked to the gentleman that started the scooter program in town about a week and a half ago and shared some concerns. And I tell you, just the way he's handling the concerns and the way he just kind of provided information, I think Logan, and forgive me, he's very easy. I wish a lot of companies were like this particular gentleman who's as interested as we are in making sure these are safe. And there's been a lot of concerns. I've had kids riding them that shouldn't be and going all over the sidewalk. But he's always been pretty patient, saying you just give it about a month. When those first credit card statements come through, we're going to see a lot less kids on these scooters. and so when the reality sets in, but they have been addressing some concerns on the particular scooters. So yeah, they're everywhere. And they're fun, right, Logan?
I would like to mention Selma Road is very, very, very bad.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to speak to us?
Hi, Seth Flora. My question is in regards to the annexation over in Springfield Township. My question is, have the residents of Southridge been involved in any of the conversations about that development? Or are there plans to involve them?
I'm not aware of the Southridge neighborhood residents specifically, if they've been contacted relative to the project. The developer was here tonight, and the annexation would be approved or voted on at the next meeting. So I'm not sure if they've contacted. I know there is a notification piece that goes with the county annexation piece of it that they send out, but we do not here with the city. But the
Okay.
county would.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Clerk, call the roll.
Mrs. Chilton,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yep.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.